Greetings from Tokyo, my dear friends. This is Daisuke, and how are you doing today? I hope things are well with you wherever you are in the world. Today, I'd like to continue on with my conversation with you with respect to certain aspects of the Criterion collection that I thought might be interesting to bring up. In particular because, as many of you know, now it's November 2019, and we are in the midst of a Barnes & Noble Criterion Collection sale, where one can get titles in the Criterion Collection at Barnes & Noble that are 50% off of the retail price of the Criterion discs. So this is in many ways a really great time to purchase Criterion titles, and also it's a great time to celebrate the Criterion collection and everything it has to offer. And oh boy, there are so many things that the Criterion collection has to offer. So I just thought I'd take the opportunity to talk about some aspects of the Criterion collection that might be of interest to you. And it might be interesting to consider, at the very least to consider, as possibilities of titles to perhaps get or to purchase during the Barnes & Noble sale. So there are many filmmakers whose films are represented in one way or another to a certain degree in the Criterion collection. So the Criterion collection, of course, isn't perfect, but it is I think it's doing quite a good job in doing its best in trying to represent the films, the landmark films of very renowned and well-regarded artists of cinema. One of the filmmakers that I have not had the opportunity to talk about in detail on this YouTube channel is the filmmaker Krzysztof Kieślowski. So Kieślowski was a filmmaker from Poland, and he is known for a lot of deep and penetrating works that deal with certain philosophical questions and dealings with human behavior and human connections, the interconnectivity among human beings. And he throws in there as well concepts regarding chance and coincidence, as well as parallelism and life versus art, and many other aspects that tend to swirl together to sometimes create profound political statements, or sometimes form to create visually artistic and poetic statements. Sometimes they're to create very humanist and broad questions that deal with the gamut of human experience, whether it be questions about how we treat each other and how we interact with each other, what kind of emotional experience is indeed possible in the kind of world experience that we live in writ large. And also those questions, I think, can potentially anyway, depending on one's point of view perhaps, can extend to other questions about that are deep-rooted, not least of which being perhaps considered by many to be one of the great questions. Does God exist? And so, among other things, of course, that I think he is trying to examine and explore in his work. The Criterion Collection has a good representation of his works. It's not complete, but it's very good. And so what I'd like to do is I'd like just to share with you the titles that appear in the Criterion Collection physical media catalog. And for your consideration, maybe you might find something that might be worth at least considering if you are interested in finding something to purchase during the Barnes & Noble Criterion sale. So the first film I want to show is Spine number 772. This is from 1981. This is called Blind Chance. In English, this is Blind Chance. And this, I don't want to go into too much detail about this film because I want to keep what it has to offer very fresh and alive for those of you who have not yet seen this film. So, but in general, I just want to say that it's a remarkable feat. It's a film from the early 1980s, so it's a film that is dealing with certain aspects of Polish society and Polish culture, and indeed politics, and this idea of a kind of the effect of this sort of political climate, if you will, on human individuality, this idea of chance and luck, whether that luck be good luck or bad luck or something in between. Who knows? It really depends on one's point of view, perhaps. And also this idea of fate and what is indeed fated for us in terms of our own existence. It goes into certain existential paths, if you will, and it really goes quite profoundly into the notion, speaking of chance, this notion of small little things in one's life that can turn into big things with great consequences, both good and bad, depending on the certain situation. And so there is much at work here in this quite surprising and very involving work of art. So this is Blind Chance from 1981. Again, this is Spine number 772. This happens to be the Blu-ray, and I would strongly recommend that you take a look at this. The next film I want to share with you is actually not necessarily a film. It's a work of television in a sense, but it's a grand, epic work of art in many, many ways, many respects. And it's this, Decalogue. Decalogue is from 1988, and this is made up of 10 episodes, if you will, of about an hour each. So the episodes themselves are not that long, but if you take them as a whole, you can imagine just how long the work is. But believe me, the fact that it's long like this doesn't necessarily mean that it's it's impossible to get through. On the contrary, it is quite compelling. It is in many ways very in terms of how art can envelop you as you watch it. Great art can really do this. Well, this is an example of that, my friends. The episodes themselves each present a kind of moral conundrum, or conundrums, plural. And so we watch these episodes and we see how these moral conundrums tend to play themselves out in a certain narrative scenario that is presented in each of these stories, that's presented in each of the episodes. Again, I'm trying to be as vague as possible because I want to preserve as much of the integrity of the work for those of you who have not yet seen this. And believe me, this is so easy for me to recommend. I have recommended this in the past, in some past videos that I have made about the Criterion collection and Decalogue. I think this is a work that I would recommend to just about anyone. It is, in terms of its content, it's quite profound. It's, I think, in some levels, somewhat deceptively simple, or it might seem to be simple on its surface, but I think that is a nice way of entry into the world that is being painted here, which is, again, it doesn't provide easy answers to what it's trying to ask. And I think that's a mark of great challenging art, That's what great challenging art should be. It should be challenging. It should provide some kind of unease, something that is not necessarily resolved, but something that is left in the mind to question further and to ponder further. I should say that this also has the works, a short film about killing and a short film about love, which are somewhat related to certain episodes of the work Decalogue. But again, I don't want to say too much about the details of this, except to say that the profound exploration of human behavior, of moral questions, of things that we have done, of ways in which we react to other people, the ways in which we react to ourselves, the ways in which our minds and our hearts tend to go in certain ways depending on the kinds of external stimuli that confront us in our very existence. These are, I think, at the very heart, and much more questions are at the very heart of what Kieślowski, I think, is trying to explore in this. It's an exploration at its very core, in the purest sense of the phrase. I think this is an exploration of the human condition. So there is, I think, a grand statement that is being made here, and it's a grand statement that is punctuated with a poetic sense of ambiguity and vagueness, which I think helps to give it a wonderful sense of longevity. This is, again, from many, many years back, but it still has the ability to affect quite profoundly. So this is Decalogue. This is spine number 837. And again, it's a very big set here, as you can see. So this is, I think, an ideal candidate for consideration for purchase during the Barnes & Noble sale, because you can get a large set like this, which is usually quite expensive. You can get this for, I think, 50% off if you can find it. So you can get a rather expensive set at half price. So it's well worth it, my friends. Next is spine number 359. This is from 1991. This is the work called The Double Life of Veronique, La Double Vie de Veronique. This is another film that is dealing with chance and existence and the sort of parallel nature of existence or existences. Whether you want to call it, if you want to apply the term doppelganger to that phrase, if you want to apply the term multiple lives to that concept, whether you want to apply the term sheer coincidence to that concept, or whether you want to apply the term some kind of divine intervention. Who knows? It could be any of the above, all of the above, or none of the above. Who knows? But there are complexities and mysteries that are wrapped in a kind of poetic confectionery that is The Double Life of Veronique, La Double Vie de Veronique, with Irene Jacob in a very complex acting performance here. Quite remarkable and astounding in many respects. This is, I think, another example of Kieślowski's work, and what's remarkable about this too is that we have a sort of cross-border or cross-cultural examination here, but even though we have this cross-cultural examination, I don't think we ever lose the sense of the human questions that are still being asked here, that the kinds of moral ambiguities and this notion of human interconnectivity and chance and fate are still intertwined in this great way that Kieślowski has achieved in this film. It is a shorter film as well. It's only, according to the back here, about 97 minutes. So it is a shorter film than, say, for instance, watching the entirety of the Decalogue. But I don't think its relative brevity gives way to any kind of ease in terms of the kinds of moral explorations that it is making. So you are getting a highly accomplished, ambiguous work of art, and that is a sign, I think, of sheer beauty and poetic genius in cinema. So this is La Double Vie de Veronique, The Double Life of Veronique, spine number 359. And then I'd like to share with you the box set, spine number 587. This is the box set of the Three Colors, Trois Couleurs, the Three Colors trilogy. Now, the Three Colors trilogy is made up of 3 films: Bleu, blue, blanc, or white, and rouge, or red. So blue, white, and red. And blue was from 1993, white was also 1993, and red was 1994. And unfortunately, red marks the final film directed by Kieślowski before his untimely passing. And so you are getting the final works, if you will, of Kieślowski in the form of blue, white, and red. Now, this is a box set, so spine number 587, and so you are getting in this box set blue, as I mentioned, and then you are getting white, and then you are getting red. Now, as far as I can tell, none of these films, blue, white, red, are available individually in any kind of Criterion Collection physical media release. And so you are, if you want to get these in a physical media release, your best bet and only bet is to get them in this box set. But I think that's okay because as many of you perhaps know who have seen the trilogy, I think you know that once you see one film, for instance, once you see the first film, Blue, I think one feels almost compelled to want to watch white and then want to watch red. There's something very hypnotic about how it gets its grip on you and it pulls you in from the very get-go. There is something quite alluring when I see these films, and it just envelops me and takes me away into its world. And believe me, there is much going on, not only on the surface, but deep beyond the surface, not only within the construct of each film individually, but also as a whole. There is a grand scheme that is being deployed here among the 3 films, and it's quite striking. And when I spoke earlier about this notion of chance and luck and coincidence in the context of his earlier films, I think those themes are on full display across the entirety of the Three Colors trilogy in a way that augments and highlights and stresses and supports the notion of this idea of human interdependence, interconnectivity among humans in such a profound and deep way that it leads, I think, to the question of perhaps predestiny or predestination, which in turn then leads to the one of the biggest questions of all, right? Does God exist, or is there a God that has created this notion of predestination? That's just one avenue of reading, of many avenues that open up when one watches these films, Blue, White, and Red. I think on a very direct level, we are getting this idea of the creation of human relationships, the destruction of human relationships, or the recognition of the creation and or destruction of human relationships, and this and how people react when these certain realizations come to fruition, and what people do when they are finding themselves in these situations. Do they lead to feelings of guilt, desperation, anguish, anger, sadness? Do they lead one to compel, or do they lead one to want to retaliate? Is there a sense of longing, jealousy, or is there something else going on here? Is there a sense of tenderness, of a sense of good faith, wanting to reach out, of trying to establish something long-lasting beyond the ephemeral, beyond the short-lived, for-the-moment thrill? Is there something more at play going on here? And so that is, I think, at the direct center of this entire trilogy. Again, among other avenues of interpretation and thought that are going on here. Very complex web of cinematic, poetic art. That is the Three Colors trilogy, in my view. Blue, white, and red. So this is, again, spine number 587. Blue is spine number 588, white is 589, and red is 590. This is, I think, quite a popular trilogy, because it's a trilogy that, as I say, I think there's a certain ease of entry, if you will, in the sense that they present certain visuals and certain music tracks and a certain feel that makes it very easy to enter its world. But once you're in, there are many questions that are being asked, and there are certain situations that arise that lead to more questions. So, but the film doesn't necessarily provide answers to everything, but it leaves open the possibilities. And I think if we can take away something from really great works of art, is that they can leave us with the idea of knowing that there are possibilities, and that is indeed a strong feeling that one has after completing the entirety of the Three Colors trilogy. So this is something that I would strongly recommend, especially during the Barnes & Noble sale, again, because you're getting the Criterion titles at half off, and it's really great to be able to get the a box set like this, which is usually quite expensive. So if you can get something that's usually expensive at a discounted price, I think that's really great. So this is the Three Colors trilogy, Kieślowski. Okay, my friends, so thank you very much. That's it for now. I hope you are enjoying the Criterion sale, and I just hope that for those of you who, like me, might not necessarily be taking part in the Barnes & Noble sale, that's not a problem, don't worry, because we can still get Criterion titles through other means, of course. And if anything, this is just a time to celebrate what it is that the Criterion collection has to offer. So to those of you out there like me who are not necessarily participating in the sale, that's okay, because it's still a great time to be a Criterion fan. So with that, my friends, I hope you are happy and healthy and well, and please, please, please keep on watching a lot of great, great movies. So until we meet again, my friends, cheers.